Hi guys, welcome back to this series of UX videos. In today's video, we'll start the second component that makes up the user interface design, and that is the interaction design. So, what is interaction design? Interaction design in general is our ability to engage with the things around us. When it comes to the systems analysis and design, it's basically how users touch something, whether they swipe on the phone, visually something, how they type, etc., etc. How do we cognitively understand what the system is asking us, or the instructions that the system is trying to convey to us? And one thing to note is that if the interaction is poor, then the entire user experience ends up being poor or is negatively affected, because if the user can make the system do what it is supposed to do, it affects how the user is going to engage with the system. Either they give up, either they complain too much, or it could, whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, the entire user experience ends up being negatively affected. The dimensions of interaction design are basically just the language that we use to communicate with the users, or the instructions that we put on the screen that are going to be followed by the users. And there are 5 dimensions of interaction design, which are words, visual representations, which is further divided into 3: typography, graphics, and color. We have physical objects, time, and behavior. And we will look at each one of those separately in the next series of slides. The first dimension is words, which is basically that words. Would your users understand the words that you're using on your system? For example, would they understand the acronyms that you are using on your system? And the majority of the time, acronyms can be very confusing to users, and some users may not be aware of the acronyms that you are using. For example, in my previous slide, I use IXN as an acronym for interaction, and as far as I know, that's not a universally accepted acronym, but a lot of user experience designers know that IXN refers to interaction. But would my users understand that kind of language? You need to take that into consideration. We need to be extremely careful that whatever it is that we're expecting our users to know, they understand it very easily and they know what it means. How easy to use and understandable are the instruction words that you're giving to your users? The second dimension is visual representations, and this looks at the typography, the graphics, and color. To give an example, think of a phrase that says, everybody knows this phrase, a picture is worth 1,000 words, which is very true, but it's no less powerful than words. Sometimes you need to be careful with the kind of pictures that you're trying to pick to use on your screen, and we'll see why just now. Typography is basically the font style that you're using on your system. You need to be able to use the font style that is easy to read on screen, and research has shown that sans serif fonts are much easier to read on screen, while serifs fonts are much easier to read on something that's on a printed paper, basically. So what that means is we need to use sans serif fonts on our screen in order to make sure that the users understand the instructions that we're trying to convey to them. This is where the phrase that says a picture is worth 1,000 words applies. Basically, graphics. Use graphics appropriately first of all, and where necessary. We all know that graphics are easy to understand depending on how they are designed. So you need to make sure that the graphics that you're choosing to use are appropriate for that screen, and they are very much necessary. Don't just use graphics because they appear cool to you or because you think they might attract users. Sometimes they might attract users in a destructive way, such that users end up being distracted from actually finishing the goal that they want to finish, or the task that they want to complete from using your system. So we need to make sure that we understand what the user wants, what is the aim of what we're trying to convey with the graphics that we are using. Colors. Colors are very important. The kind of colors that you choose to use on your system are very important, because in different cultures, different colors mean different things. So we need to be very clear whether our colors are generic or focusing on a specific culture, and make sure that you choose colors wisely. Ensure that they are not inappropriate or offensive to other cultures. Things could be understood in a different way depending on where the person is located, basically. So in South Africa, you might find that a red color means something different when it comes to money, for example. This is just an example. And then when you go to America, you find that the color red means something totally different. So you need to take that into consideration as well. And the third dimension is physical objects. How do we interact with the system? How do users interact with your system? Do they use a keyboard? Do they use a mouse? Is it a touch screen? We need to consider how somebody is going to interact with our system. Are they going to push buttons to make things happen on our system? And make sure that the things that you choose that they're going to use to interact with your system, they're easy enough for them to use. Don't use unnecessary objects, basically, just because it looks cool to you. You use something that users would find easy to use for them to complete the tasks. Time. Okay, so how long would the end users spend looking at your screen or engaging with your system? How much time will the user have in order to execute a certain task? If a user is to go through a series of actions in order to complete a certain task, you as the designer don't need to put unnecessary steps in between those series of actions, because sometimes users get easily overwhelmed. Basically, they might find that this is taking too much for them to complete, and then they might just give up. So if it's unnecessary, then don't, just leave it out. And the fifth and last dimension is behavior. What are the user's emotions and reactions when interacting with the system, basically? So this basically just wraps up the entire dimensions of interaction design, basically. Are your users happy? How are they reacting? If you have unnecessary steps in between a series of actions, how are they going to react to that? If you have unnecessary graphics, how are they going to react to that? How are their emotions towards that graphic? And that's basically it. That brings us to the end of our first video of interaction design and the 5 dimensions of interaction design. I hope you guys found this video very helpful. Please don't forget to comment, share, like, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video.